If you can give us an update on Nuwa's case.
Well, to the extent I can give it, I can say that the state government is very much on top of the matter, as are the police. You probably know that the investigation is being conducted by the police at the highest level, that there's a team that has come in from the Inspector General here that is cooperating very much with the team that is based in Benin. We are also working very much with them. You know that ideally, prosecutors and investigators should work very closely together. But particularly in this instance, we are doing that because it is something that the governor is very, very interested in, because it is something that we totally abhor in this state. And he is definitely very, very horrified by what has happened. And the ministry is very concerned about criminal justice delivery. Well, we got the point. Domestic violence is an issue. So, like I said, there is quite a lot happening. I can't really talk about details, but the state is very much on top of it. And I'm sure that in the next few weeks, you will have some very verifiable facts. You will have information that is brought out through formal channels.
Edo State domesticated the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, which expands the definition of rape. So can you tell us, for those of us who may not be as conversant about rape law, what is it that, maybe perhaps you can give us the distinction between what the VAP Act does in comparison to what the law was prior to that?
If, for example, there is an insertion, a person inserts a bottle into a female, in the old act, it would have been difficult to now start saying those were acts of rape. So any insertion of anything, for example, into a person is actually rape. And then it allows for indecent exposures. I mean, in defilement, it expands defilement. It expands. It's actually very different. It's wide. I actually am going to do a workshop on that as well, very, very shortly. But one or two issues concerning it. So we're trying to make sure that it comes out. We deal with those different issues so we can utilize it to its fullest now. So the laws that we're more likely to use are the Criminal Code and the Anti-Trafficking Law.
Do you think that domestication will now allow us to increase the number of convictions? Because we know the conviction rate in Nigeria for rape is extremely low. Do you think that expansion and the domestication of the VAP law now in Edo State will now allow us to increase the number of convictions, and will it change the way that cases are prosecuted and investigated?
Well, there are some problems. One problem is that the criminal justice system is very, very slow. That's one big problem that we have in Nigeria. What the VAP law does is to is to create a more sensitive environment. It is to ensure that many acts that currently are not criminalized are actually criminalized. That is what it's going to do. But it is through efficiently investigating and efficiently prosecuting that we will actually get far more convictions. We also need to change attitudes, because attitudes play a very big role. You know, there are very, very many people who get raped and don't report. And that itself is a big issue. It's a really, really major issue. So we need to ensure that people report, that they're not stigmatized. So those are areas, there are many different areas that we have to deal with. But there is the problem of low convictions, I will agree, but there's the even bigger problem of low reporting. We need to increase the reporting to a greater extent.
All right, so, you know, when we poll the survivors that we work with, right, when we ask them why they didn't report, many of them say that they don't have any confidence that the system will actually work for them, right? So, you know, in fact, I've actually heard people say that, but for the immense public pressure that came through social media on Nuwa's case, this case might not have even seen the light of day. What is your response to that sentiment? I mean, and how can we start to get women and girls to have more confidence in a system that they believe has failed them?
The system has to prove itself, talking very, very frankly. It is when we see successful cases that people will have more confidence. But when you have a situation where you go and report, and then, first of all, you start off very often with the mother asking, what did you wear? what did you do to provoke this rape? And then you go to the police station and you don't really get people that are listening to you in any way. And then you move on. You find that the person that is coming and telling you to settle and just take money from the rapist is actually a lawyer who should be concerned about the defense of people's rights. And then you go to court and the judge as well says, look, go and settle. Or there are endless adjournments. Look, I mean, you've already gone through a great deal of trauma. You don't want endless adjournments upon adjournments upon adjournments, and then you have to pay for so many things. So it's a torturous process for many people. I mean, I'm on the government side, but I have to say that there are many things that we need to change. These are all tied up with the problems of criminal justice delivery, and that is what we need to work at. So I would say that with time, people will come to see that we're really trying to make a big difference, because in my state and in other states in Nigeria, we are trying to make a difference and to make sure that victims are sensitively treated. Even in our response centers that we have just established, we try and make sure that they're treated with a sense of dignity. So once there's dignity and once the people are being supported, then I think we'll get far more people coming out. But the first thing is, let's not stigmatize them. Let's stigmatize the rapists.
How is it that in your role as a top prosecutorial officer in Edo State, what can you do to ensure that we eliminate all the hiccups that police are put in the way, all the roadblocks, including, mobilization money, payment to have to, even to fill out a form, you have to make some sort of payment. We heard here in Uwa's case, the family members saying that they had this issue over and over again until the case actually blew up on social media. That was something that was a big concern. So how is it that the government and someone like that's in your role, what is it that you can immediately start to do that can help young women to move further and really take your word for it as you're articulating to us now?
Well, they have to look, watch us. Action speaks louder than words is what I will say. But again, the first official responder is very often the police, man or woman that the person meets. But the first responder is very often a member of the family or someone around. And sometimes their responses are horrific. Only a few days ago, after Uwa's death, there was a true story of the woman who beat her little child who was 2 years old, who was sucking a man's penis. Yeah. You saw that now. That is a huge attitudinal problem. That is a woman who does not see that there's something wrong with blaming a 2-year-old for performing an act on an adult man. So those are things we have to change as well, because the victim comes in already shamed in many instances. So it's a huge, I'm not holding brief for the police at all, but they're from the same society. So we have to make sure that we don't blame the victim. That is the first thing. And we have to make sure that there is some sensitivity. But I also believe that it would be good to have a law in place that actually puts in steps what must be done and ensures that when a report of rape is made, that in fact, any reports that has to do with bodily harm of any sort is made, it is mandatory for the police person to immediately go to the scene of crime. We probably have to do some things that would be obvious in other places, but maybe are not so obvious with us. But the first thing for us is the attitude, I think.